4 years ago, Italian football was the benefactor of a strange new piece of tax legislation. The Growth Decree, as it was known, gave Italian teams the opportunity to offer far larger wages to football players than they could previously afford. But today, that advantage is gone, and this decision will have huge implications for the future of Italian football. The advantage is gone because on January 1st, 2024, 4 years after it was passed into law, the Italian government declined to extend the Growth Decree. So firstly, what is the decree? Well, to explain, let's use an example. Imagine you're in charge of one of Italy's biggest clubs, and you want to sign Roberto De Zerbi. That would be incredibly difficult. Leaving aside the buyout clause in his Brighton contract, there would be a Premier League salary to match too. The Growth Decree was introduced to reverse the brain drain caused by talented Italians leaving the country. A tax break came into effect to entice back the likes of De Zerbi while also making Italy more attractive to skilled foreigners. It makes your pitch to his agent easier, as anyone in the 48% tax bracket willing to domicile in Italy would pay around half of that on their income instead. And that is a significant advantage. Let's say that you plan to offer De Zerbi a salary worth €10 million gross. Before the Growth Decree's implementation, De Zerbi would make €5.5 million after tax. Now he'd take home €7.5 million. Your offer becomes far more competitive, and the chances of De Zerbi reappearing in Serie A increase. But there's just one problem, and that is the changing political wind. There have been 3 prime ministers since the decree, and elements of it, which were already modified in 2022, have now been repealed. Evidently, the optics of the Growth Decree, which costs €674 million a year and benefits only 15,000 people, are not the best amid a cost of living crisis. The tax break was one of the few edges that Serie A clubs had in recruitment. 198 of the league's 653 players take advantage of it, 30% of the whole, and the benefit to the teams is estimated to be around €150 million. Roma, for instance, may not have been able to appoint Jose Mourinho in 2021 had the Growth Decree not been in effect. The loan of Romelu Lukaku and his colossal subsidised salary would have been far more challenging as well. But of course, the benefit went beyond Italy. Chelsea have sold Tammy Abraham to Roma, and more recently, Fikayo Tomori, Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Christian Pulisic to AC Milan. All of them were on Premier League money. Approximating, let alone matching their salaries at Chelsea, would have been an onerous task without the Growth Decree. Its paring down will only make it harder for Premier League clubs to sell into Italy. First world problems for the richest league in the world perhaps, but still a significant issue. As for Italy, maintaining the gap between Serie A and the Premier League, let alone closing it, will only become more challenging after losing this edge. The Growth Decree has coincided with a renewed competitiveness in Italian football. Since its introduction 4 years ago, Serie A teams have started to perform again in Europe, reaching a Champions League final, 2 Europa League finals and 2 Conference League finals. That contrasts starkly with only 3 finals in the 10 years before. Now understandably, this surge in on-the-pitch competitiveness has attracted brands. All of a sudden, they're seeking associations with Serie A again. Sponsorship deals are more lucrative and easier to do, particularly if these teams are successful and sign stars. And this is because they can guarantee greater exposure, brand awareness, and publicity. Players benefiting from the tax break have brought an extra 621 million social media followers to the league since the Growth Decree was implemented. 50% of that uplift derives from a group of 40 players, whose arrival in Serie A has been facilitated by the tax break. Economically, a fledgling virtuous cycle had been created. The Growth Decree also appears to have achieved its purpose of helping to stimulate growth. It has created jobs. Milan, for instance, have gone from employing 145 people in 2018 to around 250. It would be senseless, total madness to change the decree, Milan CEO Giorgio Fulani said. And football stimulates tourism. It brings people to cities, fills hotels, and books up restaurants. Serie A has collaborated with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation and the Italian Trade Agency to use its legends and ambassadors for Brand Italy. But the game continues to be viewed as exactly that, a game, not an industry. Sympathy for clubs seems in short supply. On the one hand, why should the state be obliged to help out entities owned by hedge funds, American billionaires, Chinese conglomerates, Italian media tycoons, and movie moguls? And on the other hand, the volatility of national and local politics and the snail-like pace of bureaucracy have continued to hold Italian football back. However, outrage over its prospective disappearance isn't universal. The head of the players' union, Umberto Calcagno, argues that the tax break discriminates in a frightening way against Italians or foreigners who've already been in Italy since it came into effect. And he isn't the only one to think that it's encouraged clubs to buy players from abroad at the expense of developing kids in their academies. This has been a sensitive topic ever since Italy failed to qualify for the World Cup in Qatar in 2022. Of course, there is a change on the horizon. Only 6 months ago, an advertising campaign, commissioned by Serie A, declared Calcio is back. Now, a story about a tax break seems likely to check that optimism. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Daniel Taylor, Ollie Kay, Amy Lawrence and Rafa Honigstein. With the latest transfer news and insight on every Premier League football story that matters, theathletic.com puts you inside football. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.